Do you ever feel like you're stuck in a cycle of being financially stretched? Constantly moving but getting nowhere? You're not alone, especially not with inflation currently running wild the way that it is. The cost of living has gone through the roof. We can't individually control macroeconomic factors, but we can control our own habits that could be contributing to us feeling financially stuck. Today, we're going to delve into 9 of these habits, some of which might seem harmless on the surface, but they could be quietly sabotaging your journey to financial well-being. As Aristotle once said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. I love this quote. It emphasizes that being really good at something isn't a one-time achievement. It's a continuous daily practice. The flip side is that struggling with our finances is often not because of one mistake that we made, but probably because of small daily habits that we've allowed to creep into our lives that are keeping us living paycheck to paycheck. Habit number 1 is wasting time unproductively. Unproductive time is lost investment in yourself. It could be harnessed to earn more money, whether that's through a side hustle or improving your knowledge or skills in a certain area. A couple of months back, I decided to challenge my thought that I didn't have enough time to work on my side hustle or to work on improving my knowledge or skills in areas where I think I need improvement. I conducted a time audit and I looked at areas that I was actually spending my time on after a long day. Now, I knew that I like binge watching TV, but I didn't realize it was sometimes as bad as up to 3 hours of Netflix binging during the middle of the week. It honestly sounded excessive when I said it out loud that it was 3 hours sometimes. So I decided to cut down to 1 guilt-free hour of Netflix binging. After that, I decided to try and spend the next 2 hours doing something productive. All the things I wanted to do that I kept saying I don't have enough time to do. So what that looked like for me was doing something like cleaning the kitchen while listening to an audiobook or listening to an educational podcast. I've actually used some of that time to work on starting this YouTube channel as well, something I've wanted to do for a long time, but I kept saying I don't have enough time. So if you're having the same struggle, I encourage you to do a time audit as well. Look at what you're spending your time on and question and challenge yourself whether you really don't have enough time or maybe you just need to reprioritize some of the things you are spending your time on, whether that's during the week or at weekends. I've had to learn as well that you don't have to wait to have one great big chunk of time in order to do something. Steal 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there, 30 minutes there. You'll be surprised how much it will add up, and you've actually achieved a lot by the end of a week by just stealing pockets of time to work on things that are important to you. Habit number 2 is feeding your fear instead of your faith. The thing with fear is it pretends to keep you safe. The way this keeps you from progressing financially is it keeps you thinking small. And thinking small will only ever lead to small results. It keeps you from stepping out and taking chances that could be very rewarding for you. In my journey to becoming a chartered accountant, I had to learn to feed my faith that I could do this, rather than my fear. Although I live in the UK now, I qualified as a chartered accountant in South Africa. In order to qualify as a CA, you need to do an undergraduate in accounting, then you do an honors year, which is basically like a 4th year of university. Now, this was an incredibly hard year and really difficult to pass. The first time I did it, I was a full-time student and I failed. The next year I did it, I was now working full-time, so I had to try and find time to study while working, which was really, really difficult. I was working in a really challenging field as well, in auditing, which meant a lot of overtime sometimes. It meant I had to use all of my annual leave. I had to actually use that in order to study. So I did it a second time and I failed again. Now, I could have listened to my fear, which at the time was telling me I could be stuck in the cycle of writing this exam over and over again, giving up so much of my life towards something that maybe I was never ever going to be able to pass. The fear was telling me maybe I should just cut my losses and quit. But I fed my faith instead. I tried to get around people that had failed this exam as well before, but had subsequently made it. I didn't want to give in to the fear. And it wasn't as if this was the final exam that I needed to now pass to become a CA. I still had 2 board exams to do after trying to pass this one exam. So giving in to fear would have been easier. But I kept going and it paid off. On the 3rd attempt, I passed. And when it came to writing my board exams, I passed both of those the first time around. I probably wouldn't have been able to move to the UK for work if I wasn't a qualified accountant. So sticking it out has paid off in so many ways. So try look at your own life and question yourself. What's holding you back, especially on areas that have to do with your finances? Are you struggling with paying off debt because you're actually afraid to face how much debt you have? Are you afraid of going for that promotion because you think you might fail, you might not get it, you might embarrass yourself? Remind yourself that fear pretends to keep you safe. I try to remind myself that when I'm old and grey one day on my deathbed, Really, the things I'm going to regret are the things I never tried to do, or the things I never gave my all to. I won't regret the things that I tried and I ended up not doing well in. Habit number 3 is over-reliance on debt. Debt, in essence, is borrowing from your future self. And if you constantly do it, financial progress becomes nearly impossible. Debt for assets which will generate income or for something which will actually increase in value like a house is reasonable. But debt for consumer goods like food or clothes, that might indicate that you're living beyond your means. With easy access to buy now, pay later schemes, debt has just become so normalized today. But those purchases add up quickly. Debt, like weight gain, seemingly appears overnight, but it takes forever to shed. If your income is primarily servicing debt, there's nothing left for you to save or invest and grow your money. I find that setting financial goals can be a really powerful deterrent from spending money needlessly on credit for things I don't really need. It shifts my focus to bigger goals that are more important and worth sacrificing for. By understanding this missed opportunity to save or invest for some big financial goals that I have, I've reprioritized how I spend, and I try to allocate some of that money to bigger goals that I need to sacrifice for now so that I can enjoy in the future. The 4th habit is borrowing the maximum you can. Banks may approve a huge loan, but is that how much money you really need to borrow? It's easy to get enticed by what the bank is willing to lend you, but what I consider is doing my own calculations of how much I'm comfortable repaying each month. I have to remind myself that the bank doesn't know my lifestyle or my future plans, so they can only assess how much to lend me based on the information I give them at that point in time. When we bought our house, we were approved for a larger loan, and we almost did get carried away with how much the bank was willing to lend us. But in the end, we stuck to our pre-decided amount of how much we wanted to be repaying every single month. That decision has given us flexibility. For instance, I could afford to take a short break from work after a recent redundancy that I went through. I haven't had a panic to find a job immediately, and I've been able to take some time off to focus on some more important things at the moment. And with the way interest rates have been shooting through the roof recently, I'm so glad we didn't go for a larger mortgage. Habit number 5 is not having a plan for your money. As the saying goes, a goal without a plan is merely a wish. Now we all know that wishing for wealth won't make you rich, but planning for it might. As little as 32% of US households prepare a monthly budget. Now the word budget often conjures up negative feelings in people. It feels restrictive, it feels like it's stealing your joy. But honestly, having a budget is just you telling your money where to go. It's actually a form of self-care for future you. Have you ever felt confused at the end of the month? Looking at your bank statement, confused, like just looking for fraudulent transactions that never happened because you just don't understand where your money went. Been there, done that, and that's the aftermath of not planning. When I don't budget, I find that it's easy to feel richer than I really am. My money wanders into overspending, and I really can't account for where things went at the end of the month. Writing down my monthly income and expenses helps me spend within a framework that's helping me build towards the future that I actually want, and not just living for today. And now when expenses in excess of what I can afford based on my budget come up, I'm just learning to normalize saying, that's not in my budget right now. Habit number 6 is trying to keep up with social media or trying to keep up with the Joneses, however you like to refer to it. I actually think that financial stress related to keeping up with the Joneses was a lot better for our parents. Their view of other people's money socially was relatively restricted to the people that they actually knew. But social media has brought the lives of the people we know and millions of people we don't know to our fingertips. One of my favorite sayings is comparison is the thief of all joy. This couldn't be truer in a social media age. Online comparisons and FOMO often lead people to overspend and deviate from their financial plans, driven by the belief that they should match other people's experiences that they're seeing around them. It helps me to remember that social media is highly curated to show the best moments from people's lives. And I try to remind myself that I'm not privy to these people's bank accounts. I don't know how they're financing the things that I see them doing on social media. Are they in debt? Do they have a side hustle that's making a lot of money for them? So only our own goals should dictate how we spend our money. Habit number 7 is lifestyle creep. Of all the bad habits that keep you poor, this one is probably the sneakiest. Lifestyle creep is when your spending gradually increases in line with your income. Kind of sounds harmless. You're earning more, so you spend more, right? But here's the catch. It's often increased spending on non-essentials, which means you're not putting that extra income towards more savings or more investments. Imagine you get a raise at work and you decide to move to a bigger house or get a nicer car. These upgrades come with bigger monthly payments, more insurance, and more upkeep. The more you earn, the more you spend. And you're not necessarily improving your financial health. You may feel richer because you're spending more on things you previously couldn't afford at all, but in reality, you're not really growing your wealth. The solution to this is mindful spending. Recognize lifestyle creep. And when you get that raise or when you get that bonus, think about your financial goals. Maybe it's better to use that raise to increase your rate of investing every month, or to put it towards your retirement planning, rather than immediately upgrading your lifestyle. Habit number 8 is not planning for emergencies or life disasters. Saving an emergency fund is oftentimes an afterthought. 65% of people in the UK don't think they have enough money set aside to last for 3 months without going into debt if they lost their jobs today. In the US, 57% of adults are uncomfortable with how much they have in savings today. Think of an emergency fund as a financial lifeboat. Without it, unexpected events can derail your finances, sometimes irrecoverably. Whether it's job loss or medical issues or emergency car repairs, life is full of unexpected surprises. And if you're not prepared, these costs can drive you into debt. Some people can think it's impossible to save because they're just making ends meet. The key is to pay yourself first and to start small. Even saving a little bit from each paycheck will add up over time. Aim to eventually have 3 to 6 months of expenses set aside as an emergency fund. One strategy is to use the 50-30-20 rule. Spend 50% of your income on your needs, 30% on wants, and 20% towards savings. Automate your savings so that they go directly into a savings account each month as soon as you're paid. Don't give yourself time to think about it. I try to remember that building an emergency fund is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's the buffer between me and life's unexpected events. Habit number 9 is not considering the impact of your social circle. I'm sure you've heard the saying before that you're the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. This applies to your financial habits too. If your friends constantly splurge or lack financial discipline, you might find yourself falling into similar habits. It's important to become aware and understand that your friends can shape your spending habits, consciously or unconsciously. It's not about ditching friends. It's about making conscious choices to put yourself in motivational spaces. It's okay for different friends to serve different purposes in your life. But if you know that your current circle of friends isn't pushing you towards financial well-being and maybe they're actually pushing you in the opposite direction, consider finding a mentor or joining a group or community that advocates for increased financial literacy. The flip side to that social media point I made earlier is that social media can be a really great place for you to surround yourself with people that are on that journey. So whether that's on YouTube or on Instagram, there's so many pages and spaces where people are talking about finances. People are giving tips on how to improve your finances. Just find the space that inspires you to do better. Try to influence your current circle positively too. Share your goals and your tips with them. Remember that your social circle is powerful. Make sure that it's pushing you towards wealth and not away from it. Going back to Aristotle's quote that I mentioned in the beginning, excellence is not an act, but a habit. I hope this video has inspired you to start cultivating good habits for your finances. Small habits applied consistently compound over time and will lead to substantial outcomes. These are habits I'm continuously working on cultivating. Lastly, be kind to yourself. We all mess up sometimes, but the worst thing you can do is give up altogether on trying to cultivate good habits just because you missed the mark a couple of times.